test for doctors who save lives in the bomb shelters, often without electricity. A test for electricians who work without sleep and rest to give electricity to those who need it. This is a test for volunteers and all those who need a place to stay. But first of all, it is a test for those who defend us. Those who are reclaiming Ukrainian territory meter by meter. These tests make us stronger and resilient. But even the strongest need help to win the war and to rebuild.
And it is my great pleasure to invite to the stage the moderator of this panel, Irina Ozymok, the founder of the International Mayors Summit. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I was walking this morning here in Davos, and I met a lady, and she gave me the Wall Street Journal, and the title here with the destroyed city says that retail sales post biggest drop of 2022. Again, this morning we saw the article in New York Times, and that mentions Vitaly Klitschko, who is also here, expressing hope that the tanks will be sent to Ukraine. Of course, you've heard, the world heard a lot of new names for you, like Mariupol, Bucha, Kremenchuk, Bakhmut, Izium, cities that you probably didn't visit and wouldn't learn about. And it's a pity you, as a world, know about them because of the war and not because of innovations or great achievements. But that's the reality, and that's why we produced this video, so you could not just have names of the cities, but to see what Russia is doing. And of course, needless to say that that's the genocide of Ukraine, of Ukrainians, and even the recent attack of Dnipro a few days ago just reminds about the atrocities Russia does. However, as Ulana said, we will win, and you all talking about having these talks, conversation here all these days, we see that you as us believe in our victory, so we will definitely need to rebuild Ukrainian cities, and it's not even early to speak about reconstruction already now, because people do live there. Some people stay there despite everything. So today we will speak about reconstruction with mayors, so you could learn from them about what they live in their cities, how their reality is, and what their plans to reconstruct are. What is also important through these mayors, who are also heroes because they are fighting and defending their people every day, you can kind of get closer to Ukrainian cities. So I have a pleasure to invite here on stage Mayor of Mykolaiv, Alexander Sinkevich. Mayor of Zhytomyr, Serhiy Sukhomlin. And mayor of my hometown, Lviv, Andriy Sadovy. In this discussion, we will be also joined by Mustafa Nayem, Deputy Mayor of Infrastructure and Regional Development, because, of course, Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Regional Development, because, of course, for rebuilding, we need the cooperation between central government and local government. Hi, Mustafa.
Добрий день.
Добрий день. Great.
Good afternoon.
Okay. We will start from with Mykolaiv, and Mykolaiv suffered a lot, and for you to imagine, when we were talking with Alexander some time ago, he was saying that first they see the rockets coming, and only then they have the air alarm. Because the attacks were from occupied Kherson, it was very close, and the distance didn't allow for the system to work faster. Then you have the problems with water supply, and basically people receive water from the tap, so it's salty, which is also endangering and damaging the heating system. In the same time, we saw with the war that we have a great partnership and intensified cooperation with foreigners, with foreign cities, mayors who are becoming your friends and allies. And recently you had the welcoming minister from Denmark. How this cooperation is ensured, and which help and which cooperation is valuable for Ukrainian cities now?
It's a very big pleasure for me to be here. I'm sorry. First of all, I think I need to put people in context of Mykolaiv, because on this video that we just saw, there is no Mykolaiv, but it is the third city by the amount of rockets that were used for shelling. And as for Mykolaiv, before the liberation of Kherson, which was on November 11th, our city was not bombarded only 46 days while all this war. So almost every day we had bombardments and shelling with different type of rockets, S-300, band, cluster bombs, all that stuff that's usually used to kill as many people as they can. So and for sure the biggest challenge was for us absence of drinking water starting from April 12th. Yes, we started to look for help, and one day our President Volodymyr Zelensky, in his speech to Denmark government, asked Denmark to help us with, let's say, with the emergency needs and the future development. And they helped us a lot. We have really tight cooperation with them on emergency needs, and more they also, let's see, they help us to build a future plan, and we started to build it from let's say from scratch, from the master plan, from the general plan of the city, which will be the plan for the future development of the city. For sure, no one was ready for this war, but when people ask me how I usually feel when I was elected as a mayor of a peaceful city and then became a mayor of the city that was in a war state. By the way, people on the south say that Mykolaiv keeps the south of Ukraine, and I usually say we don't feel too much, we usually act. So we have problems, we meet different people and they help us to resolve those problems. So first of all, we had emergency needs on heating, water supply, which a lot of different companies, a lot of different countries helped us to resolve. It's Red Cross, it's Denmark, let's say many that I will count now. We don't have too much time. But anyway, I think local authorities took the biggest responsibility on site while this war, because we started to organize our cities, we started to build fortifications, we started to help our army, our tractors got all those Russian tanks that they left on the fields. We repaired them and provide them army with them. So yes, we have a plan, and for now we need to finish this war, but we already work on those documentations, on those procedures with different associations, what will be the next. And we have a GIS system, online system, which we use, which we started to develop 4 years ago, and now we created an additional layer, and the Kiev Institute of Economic, we put all those instructions on top of this layer, and we already made a let's say, evaluation, it's about 90 million euros of damages that we. 900 million euros that we already, let's say, proved by the scales of destruction. But anyway, I usually say that this war is a chance for Ukraine to change itself. I mean, this is also a chance for Mykolaiv to use this war to become better, to be better.
So coming back to foreign partners, what do you learn from them? Which expertise do you need from them? Because it's not only about water purification equipment, let's say, because those will be these urgent needs, but longer term, what is needed?
I would say that we have to not to repair everything, but to rebuild everything, because we don't want to just rebuild all those schools or kindergartens that were destroyed by the rockets. We need to rethink the situation and build, instead of 3 schools that are destroyed near each other, 1 modern school, and to provide children with a transportation which will bring them to this school that they want to be present. And for sure, these are different directions of development of the city. These are hard directions. I mean, heating, water supply, clean energy. But there are also soft directions. I mean, education, medicine, and everything connected with human resources, because we need to prepare people for the future city of Mykolaiv. And for sure, it's not about only for but rebuilding or renovation, but it's more about investment, because we don't want as a city to be as a city of poor people that every time ask for money. Please provide us with money, help us to survive. We want to be a partner that want to create new enterprises in the city of Mykolaiv. We are ready to prepare such people. We work in this case also with Denmark and other partners to prepare workforce, because Ukraine will be the big market after the war, big market of the goods, big market of workforce, and we need to be prepared now while this war.
And we need to have people to live there and to come back to Ukraine for this, to ensure that it's a market. Thank you, Alexandra. This morning at the Ukrainian breakfast, we had the pleasure to hear John Kerry, and he said that everything what is happening on the planet will just get worse. Recently, we participated with you at the conference in Washington, us from our cities, yes, but distantly, and it was about energy support, and everyone says that we need to rebuild greener. Yes, we need to ensure environmental friendly, with all the norms, etc. But in the same time, how to merge these needs, urgent needs, because people need to survive, and of course the number of generators bought for Ukraine, like fuel generators, is huge. So those are urgent and maybe not this green and environmentally friendly, but it helps to survive. But in the same time, we want to rebuild better, greener, and according to standards. How to ensure we can do this?
Перш за все, доброго дня всім.
First of all, good afternoon to everyone. And to continue what Alexander was saying, I personally do not really perceive this word renovation of Ukraine. There are some things which we do not have to restore. Once we're talking about the utilities, about the systems of heating, sometimes it's easier to construct something new, but not to go back to the Soviet past. And to do that, we need to understand how many people we will have in Ukraine, what business will be operating, and what is the place of Ukraine in this world. But before the war, we started a big program. We launched a big program of replacing gas and energy balance of the city of Zhytomyr. I will tell you 2 figures. If in 2014 Zhytomyr was consuming 96 BCM of gas, but last heating season was 53 BCM, and this season will be 42, 43 BCM. Basically, it's a reduction, twofold reduction, but also we build the power plant which is working on the timber, and we do it together with our European partners. And now when we have a big shortage of electricity, such power plants help us to survive and to provide electricity to cities. And we understand that the situation could be very difficult during the heating season, and we built 4 large boilers which also operate on the timber, and that helps us to save some budget money, and it makes the system more sustainable. Today we are developing the programs and the business which will switch to renewables, and such business will be supported by the compensation from the budget of the city, and the compensation will be up to 20% of the cost of the project. At the conference of San Francisco, we were one of the first cities of Ukrainian cities. The memorandum about switching to renewables. Also, Zhytomyr received the Silver Award from the European Union for reduction of CO2, but today we shouldn't be renewing, restoring something old, or restoring the power plant which was constructed 20 or 30 years ago. We are having negotiations with Japanese companies, and we understand that at the level of Ukraine these are difficult, complicated projects, and they are quite expensive, but basically we'll be able to use them for heating some small towns. During the war, we launched the waste processing plant, and also we will be using this waste processing for generating electricity for the city. And our plans in 2 years will have 5-6 BCM of gas for the city.
And it's, again, interesting. We were talking about this experience from abroad. You mentioned hydrogen, and I think in Reykjavik they have all public transport already on hydrogen. So it's also important for Ukrainian cities to have the same vector, let's say.
Можливо, це, і ми над цим також працюємо, але
that we're working on that, but that's a question to our ministry. And I believe Mustafa Nayyim will tell us more about what the state could offer to local self-governance, what fuel to use for communal transportation, because it's very expensive.
To Mustafa. Пане Андрію, Олександр,
Alexander, Sergei, they have many people who left the city. In Lviv, it's quite the opposite. There are
about 250,000 staying, and in Lviv it's 150. I'm temporarily resident of Warsaw, and I know that Warsaw population raised by 17%, and of Gdańsk it's 33 after the full-scale war started. What are the new challenges you had in the city, and was the city prepared for this? How do you enlarge city? Because we presume that lots of people will stay there in Lviv. They kind of like it, this cultural capital of Ukraine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, unbroken ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to have a conversation with you. 10.5 years ago, Lviv hosted Euro Football Championship. Today, Lviv, huge humanitarian hub, 5 million Ukrainian IDPs passed through Lviv during Russian invasion, and we had days when Lviv hosted more than 2 million people per day, per week, per month. It is not possible, but it is possible in Ukraine. And very often journalists ask me, why? Ми не сприймаємо українців.
We do not see Ukrainians who come to Lviv as relocated people, as replaced people. We actually see them as Ukrainians, as a part of our nation. So we've opened up our hearts and our doors to them. So I myself hosted a family from Zaporizhia. They didn't know that they lived in the mayor's apartment before they saw me visiting them. So prior to the war,
Conversation with my colleague, mayors of West Ukrainian city, about IDPs. Це було складно, тому що ніхто не вірив. Я говорив, ми повинні готувати.
And nobody seemed to believe, and I told them that we have to get prepared. So we rebuilt everything that could be rebuilt. We modified and transferred everything that could be thus modified and transferred, so that everything remains operational. Lviv was subject to numerous shelling by missiles and rockets. Some people were killed, some wounded. But if you see all of that as part of your own life, and if you dedicate your work, your effort, and your heart to that, understanding that those at the front line have much more difficult trials facing them. So then you understand that impossible can be made possible. I am impressed by today's speakers at Ukraine breakfast in Davos, particularly His Eminence Gudziak, and you understand that people who were innocent but were killed, you understand that they make this land holy with their sacrifice, and Holy Land has special energy. Very few people appreciate that in the world, and we can be a beacon for the entire world, the world which is very complex, which is at the crossroads, and we discussed all of that over these days in Davos, and it is essential for the synergy that we've formed amongst different self-governments, amongst mayors, and between us and the central government to get preserved. It would be again essential after the war, when we recover our country, and we will build on this sacrifice of the people. We will go to a higher level, but it is doable. Together we can do that.
Thank you, Andriy. I will just come back for a second I will not even call them IDPs, Ukrainians that came to Lviv. What we saw after 2014, that people were coming, for example, from Crimea, they were opening some shops or restaurants. They started being integrated in the city, also stimulating this small entrepreneurship, which for Ukrainian cities is crucial. Do you see the same dynamics now, or it's a bit different?
We have Mariupol community, Melitopol community, Kherson community, Kharkiv community. We've hosted National Academy of Art from Kharkiv. It is huge potential. We have good example, new restaurants, Crimea, Odessa, Kharkiv restaurants. I think it is good, but one moment. After the occupation Kherson, a lot of our new citizens tell me, we must go home. I ask, you have water in home in Kherson? You have electricity? No. Why? It is my home, I must. Хіба таку націю можна перемогти?
This nation is invincible. Never will we give up.
I would like to have the connection with Mustafa and ask a question about reconstruction and this synergy of efforts. We used to say that reconstruction is we want to rebuild better. But what I've heard here, and I think it's from a good friend of mine, it's build forward. And I think that's a better formula that we can use here. So Mustafa, the question goes to you. What does it mean for Ukrainian cities and communities, and how the central level can help this for the regional level? What maybe there are new instruments that could be supportive so they achieve this goal?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Перш за все, я радію.
And it pleases me to see our wonderful mayors, Andriy, Sergei, and Alexander.
So, first of all, what I can say that when we're talking about restoration, rebuilding, and reconstruction of Ukraine, our ministry was focused on this issue starting from the first days of the war, because infrastructure issues and infrastructure is the crucial issue for delivering our main goods and cargoes to the front line. And of course, from our perspective, it is maybe even early to say about something of rebuilding, because we are talking now about survival projects, about survival issues which need to support our regions. I'm not talking about all regions, because there are different situations, different regions. For example, Kherson region or Kharkiv region, which are now suffering from the shellings, they are in bad situation and they need more support and more survival issues than other regions. But to describe the overall situation, since the full-scale invasion of Russia, Ukrainian infrastructure suffered enormous. More than 25,000 kilometers of roads and more than 340 bridges have been damaged, and more than 6,000 kilometers of railways tracks have been destroyed for these days. We are talking also about all our aviation industry. 13 civilian airports have been damaged, almost 50% of the energy system, and 1,500 schools was totally demolished, and more than 300 residential infrastructure facilities have been damaged or destroyed totally. So, for these issues, I can say that the recovery has already begun where it is possible and where it is critically needed right now. Last year was essentially marked by survival projects, as I mentioned before. And for our ministry, you know that we are now merged two ministries. One is the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport. It was our responsibility till December. In December, Ministry of Regional Development also was joined to our team, and now they're working with us. So for that moment, we are also responsible in the zone of our responsibilities, also regional projects. The restoration of transport links with the deoccupied regions and expanding export capacity, it's still our responsibility, but we are talking now about regional issues. So from now on, our key goal is to move on to building an effective and logical recovery management system. As you understand, and as you mentioned, and all our mayors say that it is very important now to prepare this restoration and prepare all these rebuilding projects. For this purpose, we are already making a number of institutional decisions. In particular, last week, the government established the State Agency for the Recovery and Development of Infrastructure of Ukraine, which will be in charge of the implementation of projects to rebuild the country. International partners and business will now have clear understanding of who is responsible for the recovery, who has complete data on the needs, and who will directly implement infrastructure projects. I will tell now the key recovery principles which we are now providing, and we trying to implement them into the life, in addition to transparency. And I would say that transparency is a very critical issue, because for all our partners, they need some reliable partners and reliable agencies which can spend donor money or loans in transparent way and accountable. So additional to transparency and openness, the basic principles of recovery, we are building it in human-centered, starting directly from the people. What does it mean? First of all, we are calculating the needs in the regions on the basis of clear criteria. In particular, I'm talking about the number of people who are the actual users of basic services, heating, it can be water supply, etc. We're also counting how many people